Getting the job done right is the goal of every home builder and homeowner. As a member of our building community, All Access will become a trusted resource for every stage of your building and renovation projects. Plus, we're constantly adding new project guides, videos, articles, expert tips, and more for members only, because there's always more work to be done. Sign up now or give a gift to another builder at finehomebuilding.com/allaccess.
You're doing this work because you love either doing the carpentry or you love being of service to other people. And I think we get a bad rap as an industry because people are so nice, they keep extending themselves more and more without knowing what bad shape financially they're in.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast, a regular discussion with building industry professionals. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. Today I'm joined by Justin Zeller, founder and general manager of Red House Design Build in Providence, Rhode Island. You can find the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast and the original Fine Homebuilding podcast at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. You can leave feedback and ask questions there too. Justin, thanks very much for being on the show.
Oh, thank you very much, Patrick, for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So we were introduced by our fellow friend and video producer, Colin Russell, and he told me that you have, a business model that's common amongst a number of folks, and he thought you'd be good to talk to. So thanks to Colin. Your company has a history that many listeners can relate to. When you founded Red House in 2006, it was the worst part of the recession. What was the company like then, and what is it like now?
Well, I think the benefit of starting a business during a recession is that there's really there's no place to go but up. There certainly was a possibility to fail, and we saw that as COVID hit. I teach a class for the Rhode Island Builders Association on one on estimating and one on project scheduling. And what's really interesting is in the past 2 years, those classes went online, but just tons of people who are starting new contracting businesses over the last year and a half during COVID. It makes sense, though. It's the time to start a business. It can be a really hard time to have a business, though. And it can be scary. So when I started
what do you think? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what do you think is leading these folks to want to become contractors?
Well, I think a lot of them are probably folks who were working in contracting or carpentry beforehand. Some are in the trades, like electrician and plumbers who are starting new businesses that had been doing it prior. And some of those folks I saw had been laid off and had thought, well, why not? There's, don't tell the folks who help support programs like unemployment, but I think a lot of people felt like if I'm being supported partly by unemployment, maybe now is the time to explore opening my own shop.
You have more choices, right, than if you need all the money to pay all the bills, right?
Right. And you know what? I saw a lot of people from the hospitality industry who may have tangentially had work in the trades, or maybe their husband or their wife had been working in the trades before, and they decided with hospitality having essentially shut down completely and that lifestyle not necessarily being what everybody wanted to be a part of, they jumped into opening their own business.
Back to my initial question, and sorry for taking you off track here, but so what did your company look like when you started, and what does it look like now?
Honestly, in 2006, I started by writing letters to. When I first started in 2006, I had my son, who is now almost 16, had just been born, and I was looking for a way to make just a little more money, and I ended up subcontracting. So for the first couple of years, it was just me working for other general contractors as a site lead and essentially a lead carpenter, but being subcontracted. So, it was in 2008 when I got a call from both of those folks saying, I need you to take a couple of weeks off. And of course, I didn't have unemployment or any secondary benefits like that. And I wrote notes to people that I knew in the community, and just said, "I'd love if you have anything, I'll take it." And that's what we did. I ended up biggest project that first year I think was doing rot repair, which isn't glamorous, but
Pays the bills.
it pays the bills, and it's nice to be able to provide good service to folks. And now, since then, we've made the transition to a design build company. We did that in 2012 and 13. We took on our first internal employee who was a designer in 2014 or 15, and since then we've grown a whole architectural department as a part of our firm, architectural and interior design, and then we have the production team as well out in the field.
What made you want to move to a design build model? Was there some aha moment that you just like said, there's got to be a better way, or was it conflicts with designers or clients? What was the catalyst for change?
I've been thinking about that over the past few days, and there are a couple of things. So one, there seems to be in the niche of sort of size projects that we do, there's a lot of architects who are great architects, but what they specialize in, their niche, is just permit drawings. So getting the project to the point where the client can kind of take it from that point and move forward. But all the other design choices that go with a project weren't being done. And as I took over those projects early on, I found that I was helping the client to choose the windows, helping them to choose the casing style. We do a lot of historic work, so a lot of that was really trying to stay in what I call style-specific design, which matches what was existing for the house, and getting custom moldings made that matched it. And I just realized, like, isn't that really design? Shouldn't it be a part of a package of like preparation that's needed to even be able to price a project fully?
Did you know other builders, or did you have experience working for a design build firm?
No, nope, not at all. No, in fact, Red House now is the biggest firm I've ever worked for. Before Red House, it was working for general contractors where there was maybe 2 or 3 employees, and that was it. And so, no, didn't really have that experience. But it just made sense that we could provide better service to the client if we could help them with those choices early on and put together. And we also found we would be able to produce a project faster if those decisions had been made beforehand as well.
And how many designers on staff do you have?
So right now we have 3 designers on staff.
And how do you pair a prospective designer with a potential client?
Well, it depends on what they need and the phase of the project. So we have a very specific process that we follow as we go through, and a lot of this was learned from early on mistakes, and also sort of when the clients often come to you and they want to control how they go about the development of a project. And what we found is it's much better for everybody if we follow a specific process that we've learned works well. And that starts with schematic and programmatic layout and design. And that's not necessarily your interior finishes, right? We generally don't get to that until later in the process, many times after the construction contract is signed and we have allowances. So that first part of the design might be all focused with an architect. The second part of the process might be paired either with an interior design, interior architect, or a selections coordinator, depending on the complexity of the project.
And the first part of your process, do folks pay for those schematic and design services?
They do, yeah, they do. I'm a part of a peer group of other builders around the country, and I would say that there are a number of folks who, the way we approach it is, yes, they pay it, but it's not just a deposit on the project. which I think a lot of other builders have done. I think that's the easy thing to do is you collect, it's 2% or 3% of the project potential budget, and that's essentially like a down payment on your future project. We really focus on running our design department as an architecture and interior design company would. So all of those hours that go into that particular part of the project for development is a billable hour that gets billed against a job cost report. And so that helps us to understand how long is it taking, should it take. But it's also, I tell clients, you're paying for a service now. And what's more, and what's really important, I think, is you become our client, right? You get all of our love because you've paid for a place in line, and we're going to take care of you because you've chosen to work with us, and so we're going to pay that same respect back.
Do you own the designs, or does your client get them independent of who builds the project? Or do you just say, we build it, there's no discussion?
Definitely there can be a discussion, but we're very clear with our clients that if you want to bid it out and you want to have other people build it, that's fine, but we're going to get through phase one and we'll give you the presentations that we create. But we don't, as a company, we're design build. We're not just design. We're not going to create bid documents for clients to take. What we're creating, and one of the values that we bring, is we're creating documents so that we can price it and we can build it at a fairly economical overall expense, rather than going through a full design bid build. You'd have to pay a lot more for the types of documents that would get produced so that someone else could really bid it out.
Are clients receptive, or do they know your model before they come to you?
Oh man, we spend a lot of time educating our clients on how we work. And honestly, that's the litmus test. If a client's going to work with us or if they're not going to work with us, they know very clearly, very early on, what it's going to be like, and they get to say no at any point. We go through a process we call a discovery call early on in the sales before we ever meet with the client. We have somebody on our team who specifically, that's their job, is to do those discovery calls with clients and help those clients to understand how we work, and then decide, does it make sense? Do you want to work with us in the way that we work? And if so, then we'll set up a walkthrough.
Do some folks just like balk at this? You're steering the conversation. Do some folks just want to take control? I'm guessing those are not the clients you want. Yeah.
Yep. Patrick, Patrick on our Patrick does those discovery calls, and he'll get off the phone and say, "Yep, nope, not one of ours," because it's not what they want, and that's totally fine. Like right, Patrick, you've met with so many different folks. There's 1,000 different ways to go about project prep, and there's a good fit for everybody's wants and needs. It's just important if we know what it takes for our process to be really successful, and that means that we have to follow the process. We get in the worst trouble and have the hardest time with clients and it's usually our fault because we don't educate the client well enough on how we want to work. And then we end up having a problem where something doesn't get done at the right point, or there's a delay, or there's miscommunication, and that's typically because maybe we didn't do a good job on communicating what we need from the client.
One thing I think that new contractors have difficulty doing is pre-qualifying clients, right? Does this client have enough money to pay for this project? Do they really know what they're getting into? How do you vet your clients to make sure you're not wasting a bunch of time on projects they can't afford or don't want to pay for?
It's a good question. So Patrick has a meeting agenda for that discovery call where he goes through and he asks, what do they want to do? A lot of it does come down to budget. Fortunately or not, that's just
we're building things and it's not free.
And it's not free. So and And early on, we use a lot of tools from the Sandler method of consultation and sales, and that's it's a lot of what Sandler calls upfront contracts. So
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with Sandler. Is that a building business specific?
No, it's not. But it works extremely well with remodeling sales for sure.
And what is it called? Because I'm sure there's folks listening to this who are very interested.
Sure. So it's called the Sandler Sales Method. And there's a bunch of consultants you can hire in different localities. I think it's a franchise for those consultants, but there's also just books you can buy. So two really good books. One is something along the lines of, let me see. Should have a copy here, but one of the first ones I read is this one. You can't teach a kid to ride a bike at a seminar. And then the other one is selling. I think it's called Selling to Homeowners, the Sandler Way or something like that. But those are great books. They really help to understand that idea of the upfront contract, which is essentially, on a discovery call saying something along the lines of, "Hi, Mr. Homeowner, it's great to talk with you. Here's the agenda for what I want to accomplish today on our side. Do you have anything specific you want to accomplish? Yes, no, okay." And then you try to accomplish those by the end of the call. One of those items would be, I'm looking to have an understanding of, one, what your budget is, and then two, I would like to share what some reasonable budgets for those types of projects might be, and then see if those two match up or not.
To see if someone chokes on the other end of the phone, right?
Well, we get people who get upset and yell and like, "Oh, how could it cost that much? I know we could do our bathroom for $5,000. I was like, you might be able to, but not with us.
Yeah. And I wouldn't hire that $5,000 bathroom person, I can tell you, right?
Well, and then there's all the questions. Okay, so what does that actually cover? Is that just the labor for the carpentry? And then what, you have to buy all your own materials and you have to hire your own electrician and your own plumber? Does that cover permits? For us, we tell our clients it's everything that gets nailed down is all included, including all the service for the design, all the project administration and project management time, all of that.
So what kind of projects are your sweet spot? What do you try and do?
Well, major renovations are the majority of what we do. So major renovations, that can be an addition that also includes renovating a portion of one floor or multiple floors in a house, doing a whole home renovation. We really love doing those, doing a whole home reno with an addition. And then, occasionally sometimes doing a kitchen and bath together, but typically major renovations that include a kitchen or a bath.
I learned from my coworker, Colin, that your company has a history of using the lead carpenter model, like the one developed by construction business guru Tim Fowler. Can you please tell me the responsibilities of your lead carpenter, and has that position evolved since you started using the model?
Yeah. So when I started, so do you know what there's a conference in Providence every year for builders and remodelers, and going to that conference probably in 2010, 2009.
I'm guessing you're talking about JLC Live.
The JLC Live, right?
Yeah.
Right.
You can say that name on this show. That's fine.
I don't want to. All right. So being there and walking through, there's a book, little book stand set up, and I saw this binder. It's just a binder, right? It wasn't even a bound book, and it said a lead carpenter system. I picked it up. It had a couple of CD-ROMs in it with some recorded parts from Tim talking, and that idea of the lead carpenter is, I think, and I explain it to clients this way, it is essentially what I did as a business owner for the first 5 years that I was in business, right? I worked on the job. I controlled the subs. I controlled the quality. I knew the project inside and out. I knew the estimate inside and out. I had access to all the financials, right? So a lead carpenter at Red House does all of that. The benefit of being a lead carpenter in a company like ours is that you get to do all that stuff that many independent contractors love about doing their work without having to do all the other stuff that you don't love, like staying up late doing estimates, doing the sales call in the middle of the day and being called away from the job that you're supposed to be working on. So I really, I think the lead carpenter is an awesome system. But a real lead carpenter is somebody who has access to the financials. They are somebody who gives the final approval for the electrician sub when they're done. The person who makes that call of if they're really done or not is the lead carpenter who's on site, right? On our team, they send the approval into the office and Phyllis then can cut the check. But otherwise, they really control the job.
And is it difficult to find people with those kind of chops? I bet it is.
Yes, it is. And that's one of the reasons over the past few years we have shifted to a hybrid system. So what we found is that there are jobs that really require a lead carpenter, especially jobs up to maybe 150 or 200,000, do much better with a lead carpenter because there's so many small things that happen day to day on the project, and you need somebody. A lot of times the client is living in the home and you need a carpenter there who is both doing the on-site management and doing some of the work, and they're just a much better fit for that type of project. But then there are other projects that, especially with the labor shortage that we have, where a project manager, and right now Kevin on our team is a project manager who he was a carpenter and then he was a lead carpenter with us, and now he's a project manager. The thing about project managers in remodeling is you have to be able to understand the quality. You have to have done the work, I think. You have to have done the work in the past and understand what you're looking for in anybody who's been on site to achieve the sort of high level of finish that our clients require. But a project manager can manage multiple projects, and it really relieves what we call a carpenter two, who I think a lot of companies call a lead, but those carpenters too, then they don't have to worry as much about setting up other people. They just come in and produce. So it allows them, that hybrid system where we have some projects that are project manager and some projects that are lead carpenter. We're trying to just get to the point so everybody on our team can do the thing that they are best at, right? They can live their best life because they're doing the thing that they love the most every day.
Who takes the phone? Who takes the phone calls? Is it the project manager or your carpenter too? If that's the model.
So with the PM, the PM is taking the phone call.
Yeah.
And if the person who is on site at that particular moment needs to know, then that phone call is going between the project manager and the carpenter too, to say, hey, can you talk with the electrician is there. I know exactly what you need to do, but I need you to walk them through it. And that's, I think, where we found the best mix is that we have somebody from our team on site almost all the time, right? And it might be a carpenter two, or it might be a carpenter one, or it might be a lead carpenter, or it might be the project manager who stops by. But somebody from our team can be at the job and make sure that our standards as a team and as a company are being implemented on that particular job. With a lead carpenter, right, in that type of project, it's really perfect because everybody's there. But Patrick, I'll be really honest with you, and it breaks my heart, but we have had a lot of carpenters as a company over our 15, 16 years. Excellent carpenter twos who wanted to feel like they were moving up the ladder. And unfortunately, and I know this a lot better now than I did earlier in my career, but a lot of those folks who were excellent at knowing exactly what to do day to day, but weren't as good, didn't have kind of the natural talent for planning that stuff that's going to happen a lot longer. I had one guy who admitted to me, he said, when I was a carpenter, I loved it. I loved coming into work. And I got to say now, it's just so stressful. I wake up Monday morning not really wanting to go to work, or not being able to sleep Sunday night. We have to find the way as an industry to be able to put people in the place where they're going to be most successful. And sometimes that means just knowing like somebody's a great carpenter too, and let's celebrate that. Let's be extraordinarily happy about that. Let's make sure that they're paid well and they have benefits and they have vacation and they have a retirement fund and that they can go home feeling really positive about who they are as a person and what they do in their life, without feeling like they need to like be something that they're not.
Let them do the work they want to, right? That's
it. That's it.
What do you think companies regularly get wrong in the residential construction business about business?
I think the hardest thing is financials. I think it's really tough. In our peer group, even we've had people who've been in business who will join our peer group, and they've been in business for 20, 25 years, and we go over, okay, here's how we do financials. Here's what a
and
WIP
they have no idea,
is.
right?
Here's what a WIP account is. Here's how you gauge for percentage complete, and here's how you judge your financials on percentage complete. And if you're doing projects that are $5,000 to $10,000 and you're finishing them within a month, it's not as big a problem perhaps. But once you get to that, even $50,000 and above, if it takes multiple months to complete a project, and you don't have a really good understanding of what your earned income is on that project, as opposed to what you've collected but not earned, or what you haven't collected yet earned, those are incredibly important pieces of information for understanding if you're actually going to make money.
Or go out of business.
or if you've already gone out of business and you just don't know it yet.
Yeah. At the lumberyard where I worked, occasionally contractors would get in trouble and couldn't buy stuff, right? And boy, then what do you do when you can't have relationship with your suppliers? You're dead in the water.
Hey man, this is a business. It's a totally fragmented industry, right? You can, as I did, all you have to get it in Rhode Island, all you have to get into business is, I think it's about $200 to get your registration with the state, and it might be $1,000 to get insurance. Right? Otherwise, if you have a truck or a van or any amount of tools, or maybe even if you don't, you can become a contractor. It really doesn't take a lot to get into the business. And once you get into the business, you start collecting money on projects that can cost as much as a car or cost as much as a house. And there's no business finance education. There's very little a person has to know. And typically just being an excellent tradesperson sets you up so that people will trust you and you can move forward. And contractors, by and large, are the nicest people in the world. They are folks, you're doing this work because you love either doing the carpentry or you love being of service to other people. And I think we get a bad rap as an industry because people are so nice, they keep extending themselves more and more without knowing what bad shape financially they're in.
I've heard it said that contractors hate to say no, and I think that's an easy way to describe it, right?
Yep, that's another way of saying it. Absolutely.
What do you like about being a contractor? That took a little longer than I would have guessed.
You know what? I love people. We just started a project this morning, and it's a really complicated, it's not a huge project, but it's in a house that was built in 1786. It's timber framed. There's been a lot of back and forth in the development of the project to figure out what it's going to cost and how we're going to approach different things. But today is go day. Aaron, our lead carpenter, just started today. He's there with Antonio, and I showed up at 7:45 just to check on them, and the client saw me coming up the driveway, and she ran over and gave me a big hug and was like, yes, she feels like today is Christmas, and that is awesome. To get that feeling at the beginning of a project, to get that feeling at the end of a project, provide this opportunity for the team of folks who work here to be able to, again, do things that they should feel so proud of. That's what I love about it.
What could you do without? What part would you make disappear if you had your magic wand?
Well, it would be nice if we didn't have to collect money, if the money would just appear, that would be great. I think that's one of the hardest things. And I think it comes with a lot of practice, right? How to ask for money, how to talk about money. It's a lot of things that even as kids, a lot of us are taught that it's not polite to talk about money. It gets much easier the more you've done it, the more you've practiced.
It's
But I
just
think
business, right? I think that's the
it
outlook you
should
have
be.
to, yeah.
It should be, but it's hard, man. It's hard for anybody from a project manager, production manager, designers. If you're even for our design staff, as they're helping to pick things out for a client and they have an allowance, it's hard when that thing they love is over their allowance and you have to tell them, I'm sorry, this is higher than your allowance. Are you okay with paying more? And sometimes they're not. You want to make everybody happy.
So you mentioned your new client today who's hugging you when you show up on the job site. So how do you keep a client like this happy and maintain like reasonable expectations, you know?
Is this a trick question? Patrick, I think a lot of it has to do with just having very clear expectations. And, I think there's a lot on, as a whole team, like we have to have a culture of, being as honest and upfront with the client as we can be, as we know about. So even going into this current project, our production staff had some really heavy concerns about some extra costs that we would incur. And again, from a money standpoint, I would much rather that this particular client not have to worry about that. But, as it came up to the first day, my production staff just came up and said, you're the developer on this project. That's kind of like our speak for the salesperson. As a developer, we need you to go in and it shouldn't be on us, right? And it shouldn't be on them yet. I needed to have a conversation with the client to say, here's what our team expects to find. And here's how bad we think it might be. And I just want you to know that that's where we could end up. And it would have been, even in Sandler, my buddy Bruce, who is a total scholar on Sandler, he says, Sandler talks about this thing called weakness junction, which is where you get to the crossroads and the right thing to do or say. And it's really right. We all know this from our personal lives too. Whether it's with your kids or with your spouse or with a friend, the right thing to say. Like, that dress really looks horrible. It's really not the right one, but you don't know. It's hard to say it sometimes. Last week could have gone either way for me. I could have backed out of it. I could have wimped out of it and not told her that total potential amount. But in the end, I think, having an open culture, we're an open book company. So everybody on our team has the ability to see the financial job cost reports and know where we are and know what the real cost is. We have a gross profit share. So everybody's tied into that piece of the financials, and they want to see us be successful. And so I have an obligation, and I think anybody on our team would have that same obligation to just be as frank and upfront as possible.
What's the worry? Like, in all of our lives, as you point out, we have these resistance to these important conversations that we know we should have. What do you think it is that makes someone want to not talk about this? I think we'd agree that oftentimes it's best to talk about it. Yeah.
Well, it's best long term.
Yeah.
But I think we're nervous about that short term effect, which can suck. And I'm over Thanksgiving break, I saw my sister, and she pointed out to me. She said, Justin, you're somebody who makes decisions emotionally. I said, you're right, I am. Mm-hmm. And I would rather have a really pleasant, happy, emotional interaction with the client than one where, with this particular client, I told her, here's where we might be. And she said, God, thank you so much for telling me. It just makes me feel so much more settled. It's a higher number than I want, but I feel so much more settled to hear that. But there are other clients who will hear a number and they will say, that's just not acceptable. I just can't do it. And that's why having those early, even Ben, our production manager, said to me last week, he said, we still have the chance. We can edit the design and we don't have to do these things. But once we start, we won't be able to back out so easily. So that was the chance, right? That client could have said, that's going to be too much. I just can't move forward with that. And if she had, we would have had a plan B. But it's hard because I would just rather
do what they want, right?
Her be in a place where she wants to give me a hug rather than at a place where she wants to yell at me.
Nothing's worse than getting yelled at.
Yeah, but it happens.
Yeah. Can you tell me about your own house? Anything you'd change or any plans to make modifications or renovations in the near future?
So my wife's not. So if my wife jokes a lot that if she were a client, she's like, what would I want to hear if I was a client? So she's not. She doesn't want to live in a work zone for sure. So right now we have 3 boys who are essentially all teenagers, and they are much bigger now than they were when they were little. They take longer showers as well. So
their clothes are bigger. You need more storage
everything
space.
Is bigger, man. Yeah. Everything. And so the one project we're looking at right now is expanding a downstairs bathroom to have a shower in it as well.
Are you stealing space, easier. I presume, from some other room, or you're eliminating a tub?
Stealing space from the garage. So it's like the best of all possibilities, I think. And as far as my wife is concerned, it's really fantastic because all the demo will happen
outside,
essentially from the garage side. Yeah. But it's interesting. The first homes I bought with my with the former administration were older fixer-uppers. And then my wife now, she had found this house and bought it before she met me. And she is such a brilliant woman. She found a house that needed almost no work to it at all. And I have to say, man, that has really been a blessing to me.
You don't miss it, working on your own place?
Growing a business, doing the things that need to happen for the team, and then having time for family. It would not have left any time for doing work to my own house. Would have been hard over the last 10 years to be able to do anything more.
What is it like architecturally speaking in size, finishes?
Oh, my house is very simple. It's a bi-level ranch. Essentially, it was built in the 60s, which is awesome because it was built like a fort, man. It is such a strong, great house. Design architecturally, it's fairly just simple and straightforward, but it works really well.
That's cool. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Justin. Is there anything you want to ask or tell our listeners before we part company? We should at least give your company's website.
Sure. So the redhousecustombuilding.com or redhouse DB for design build, redhousedb.com be our website. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, Patrick. I always like sharing and trying to teach and talking with other folks. Thank you for the opportunity.
It's been a pleasure, Justin. So how do folks catch your presentations at the Rhode Island Builders Association get-togethers? Is that something you do all the time?
I've not been able to do it the last few months, but those classes, REBA has a website. They have a pretty strong, so any folks in Rhode Island who are members of the Builders Association get to take those classes for free, which is pretty awesome. A change in Rhode Island, which I think is definitely for the good over the past maybe 5 years, as they started requiring continuing education for contractors. And so, contractors have to take some classes, and REBA has set up a number of options that are really the right sorts of classes for folks who need continuing education.
That's great. Good to know. Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. Justin, thank you for joining us, and thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your comments, questions, and suggestions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast. Thanks a million, Justin. Stay safe, everybody. Keep craft alive. Happy building.